The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com.
There's a new bar in town. Welcome to the Turnbuckle Arms, where the banter flows like wine and the topics are as fresh as an ice-cold pint. So pull up a chair, grab yourself a glass, and welcome your hosts, The Brood!
Hello and welcome to the Turnbuckle Arms Podcast. I'm your host today, Michael. Hello, and I'm joined by my fellow Brood member, Chris.
Hello, how you doing, Michael? You okay?
Am I right yourself?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Good to be here.
Okay, cool. So just to let people know, yes, this is the Turnbuckle Arms Podcast where you can have a chat and a drink, but during the current situation, we are social distancing. So unfortunately, we are at home. But again, we are part of the Turnbuckle Arms Podcast, so thank you for joining us. This is a special one for us. We're going to do a bit of a shots episode. We're going to talk about AEW and the immense roster that they have. Obviously, we've got AEW Dark, we've got AEW Dynamite, but obviously before the current situation in the world happened, they were talking about bringing out another TV show, which they've openly said that is not going to replace AEW Dark. Potentially, it's going to be on another day on the TNT network. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's really interesting with AEW, isn't it? Because they're doing the right thing by taking talent that's perhaps had its time in WWE or is unhappy there, and they're smart to sign it up. But then what do you do when your time slot for your premiere show, Dynamite, isn't long enough? And I think the answer they're using temporarily is tag matches, and a lot of them. They have an awful lot of factions, AEW, and an awful lot of tag matches. And I think a lot of the time that's used as a way to try and showcase everyone, at the same time. Dark is great as well. It's really long. It's really focused on matches and content. But Dark is starting to become, isn't it, more of a developmental trial kind of area, for new talent to do its thing and see how that goes. The other reason, the other thing they've got to help alleviate this problem of having too much talent is you've got Being the Elite, the ever ongoing YouTube show that arguably is responsible for AEW's existence in the first place. And that, as we particularly saw with the Dark Order and John Silver, has been a great way to get talent over, even if they're not on television. So they've got ways around this problem, but the only real solution in my mind is, another TV show or perhaps another hour. Now, Tony Khan has suggested that adding to the length of Dynamite was probably the first option they would use. And for me, that makes sense. It's cost efficient. It's on the same night. And there is room for more. Now, I've never been a fan of when Raw was extended, WWE Raw for too long. I think it has its problems too, and it can sag quite a lot in certain spots. But having said that, I think Dynamite has the talent for an extended show. So for me, Michael, I think that's what they're going to do, just extend that length of the show. Another show would be interesting, but again, I maybe don't want to see too much of the same thing. So tell me your thoughts on this.
Well, for me, I'm really enjoying tuning into AEW Dynamite. I think you're right. If especially with it being on a network that they don't own and they've got to maneuver around, I think the best option for me, as it is, whether it be short term or whether it be just until we get some kind of normality back, is to extend it to 3 hours. The thing that they've got is that there's so much good talent on there that when you see that banner come up at the end, basically saying that's the end, you're almost clamoring, like going, I want to see more.
Yeah.
Whereas with other companies, it's almost a breath of fresh air when that banner comes up, because AEW seem to be good at working their format for the shows. They know what to do. They know what to put on. There's never a part, I feel, that you want to fast forward or, it's running too long. As you said, there's enough talent on there that you're never going to get bored. However, because there's too much in my eyes, there's too much talent on the TV in the roster. There's not enough shown on TV, which is why they're bleeding that into AEW Dynamite. AEW Dark. Sorry. So you've got a lot of people. They've ended up at the moment. They're currently using Dark as their second show instead of it being a these are people that we don't feel that are to the caliber of being on Dynamite. We're going to put them on the free program that you can watch and see what is potentially our future stars. And we've seen title matches on there. We've seen Kenny Omega. We've seen all the big stars bleeding into both, which has helped people. Which has helped put eyes on the Dark product. I don't think it really needs it, but it helps everyone be able to wrestle and be able to get on the shows. The other side, the flip kind of it, like you were saying with being the elite, do you feel that sometimes there's too much, as in for you to get references, for you to understand certain storylines, you must have had to have watched Being the Elite to understand it, or do you feel that it's okay? You don't think, or should I say, do you feel that it's okay enough to do that without people wondering too much?
There's a bit of a mix of both. I think there's a lot of kind of references, some in jokes perhaps sometimes, particularly with the Young Bucks, that, maybe you do need to watch both. You could think of it as an extended experience. I think my only issue is BET is very heavy on comedy, and it has been used to further dramatic stories, as with Adam Page. It's not always comedy, but sometimes my issue is that, look, these days everyone knows that kayfabe isn't a thing, and heroes aren't really vicious in real life and bad guys, but they've still got to be careful sometimes. Like the Dark Order, they've done the right thing kind of now, I think, and they seem to be heading down more of a face route. But for a while, they were a comedy act on BTE, but then we were supposed to treat them seriously. Like Eva Luna is a great example of when he came out. So I had a bit of an issue with that. So I don't think you need to have seen it to follow it or get all the jokes, but I do think sometimes you need to be careful how they treat these characters on both shows. Or the flip side to that argument is this what we need these days? Seeing the personalities of the talent, is that what gets them over? Maybe more the real versions of themselves sometimes. So there's two ways to look at it, isn't there? And it goes in line with this whole kind of Twitch, streaming and the third-party content. Is that the stuff that works these days? Is that the one that's more believable in the modern age? Then if kayfabe is dead, then maybe we need to see this talent outside of the entertainment world, outside of their personas, to really get them over. So, I think it complements it, but it depends on what side of the old school kayfabe argument you fall onto, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, as I said, as you were saying there, how you look at it it's down to your perception, but ultimately AEW aren't taking themselves too seriously, which is why obviously you've got the Being the Elite YouTube channel. For me, if they're going to do a new show, would that be the new Dark, or would that end up being something new? So, like, for instance, at the moment, we're getting a lot of indie stars that aren't signed coming onto AEW Dark to help boost the talent while we're unable to travel. And I think what they've done there is a fantastic thing to get new people invested in characters like the Bear Country, which I've seen quite a lot of on YouTube, thanks to like Beyond Wrestling and that. But the fact that they've been given that stepping stone to be showcased on a show, even if it's AEW Dark, it doesn't matter. It's still AEW. People are still going to be looking at it. Potentially, they could, get better contracts, and it's a stepping stone for wrestlers to be able to get a contract elsewhere, even if it isn't with AEW. I think ultimately, for me, AEW are doing something that nobody else is doing, which is looking out for people, not just for themselves, but by looking out for other people, it's helping them, because it means that more people will start if they haven't before, more people will start getting invested into AEW because they've given other people the ability to wrestle dark matches, if you want to class it as a dark match. But I actually don't know whether or not AEW, it'll be AEW Dynamite, then Dark, and then something else. Or, as I said, will they insert a new show to sit between them both, and then possibly change the structure of how Dark is to make it be what was potentially a like the old school NXT, where you wouldn't see them on the show. You'd only see that it's the talent of the future. But again, it's because they're getting people from the indie world and not a performance center style. I don't know whether we would need a show for future up and comers, because we're already seeing the likes of Jungle Boy. Luchasaurus is already a star, but the fact that they've put him with Jungle Boy is incredible. It only boosts both of them. You've got like Darby Allin is already an established star on the indie circuit, but would you then treat the new show like what NXT does, where they don't reference anything that's happened outside of the world of WWE, and then when they bring him in, they go, oh, this is a new guy, and it's like, well, he isn't. He's new to you, but he isn't new to the people that know him. So yeah, it's that whole. As I said, I'm not sure. I don't know at this precise moment. I don't know whether if they make sure that the talent is rotated enough that everyone gets seen, I think we'll be all right for the moment. But if they are planning on doing what looks like they are doing, which is bringing more and more established stars in and bringing more people in just to get a dip of the toe into the AEW world, then yes, I think a new show needs to happen, because, as you said, the whole point of them putting a tag team in is to make sure everyone gets seen. You can't. I mean, look, if we're gonna go back to it, look, I know we were talking about AEW, but look at WWE, the amount of people that they've got in the books and the amount of people they're not using. And then obviously they're not letting them go because they don't want them to go elsewhere to bring eyes off of their product. Well, if that's the case, do something about it. Whereas AEW are doing something about it within the means of what they're able to do. Because, as I said, during this current COVID-19 thing that's happening, it's stopped a lot of people from wrestling. It's stopped a lot of people from travelling. So AEW are making the best out of the worst case scenario by bringing in people that you wouldn't potentially see on TV, but they're giving them the ability to say, look, here's an olive branch. Would you like to come and work for us for a few tapings? And it puts more eyes on them. So it's a win-win thing for AEW. So yeah, for me, my final thought would be yes, down the line, but I think they're juggling it just right, that no one is losing their spot. If you get what I mean. What about yourself?
Well, to play devil's advocate here, then let me throw a spanner into the works, and it's the TNA crossover that's currently happening. Is that going to bring even more people in and give even less time, to the AEW talent? You could argue that, isn't there? There's a spot that's been taken by essentially the Good Brothers there, and I'm all for the storyline, as you know. Maybe that could have gone someone else. So, is that a concern? Is there going to be even more kind of people on the roster now? Or do some of those go over to TNA and alleviate that problem where they're a bit thin on the ground, perhaps, their roster? AEW, so maybe that's a plan for them as well. But just a thought, really. But yeah, overall, it would be really interesting to see what they do with a third show. And I quite like the NXT approach of making its own thing, independent in so many ways. Or does this third show become a kind of, let's say, mainstream version of Being the Elite, that's like part backstage skits, maybe some matches, more of a hybrid show? Maybe that's something different.
That sounds quite cool. I mean, yeah. I was thinking that if they ended up doing a split show, you would have the TNT belt on one and the AEW Heavyweight Championship of the other. And it doesn't have to, like we used to have with Raw and SmackDown, it doesn't have to be always on there. They can cross over because obviously it's owned by TNT, so the TNT belt needs to be on both shows. But ultimately, without it being oversaturated and having a second show that has no championships on it, it could potentially be the way forward. But ultimately, until the world starts going back to normal, we won't know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that, Chris. Thank you for joining me on this shorts edition of the Turnbuckle Arms. I'd just like to say, as ever, thank you very much for everyone that's joined us today. We have more episodes available on our YouTube channel and our podcast platforming network. All you need to do is just search Turnbuckle Arms Podcast and you'll find us. And as ever, subscribe, like, share. If you have any questions, or if you fancy suggesting anything that you want us to talk about, drop it into the comments and we'll look at it and we'll hopefully have them on a future episode. As I said, we are closing the Turnbuckle Arms today on this episode. However, we are open all the time, 24 hours a day on our social media. So you can always find us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, where you can always come and have a chat about anything wrestling related, have a drink with us. You're not alone. Stay safe. And as always, take care of each other. See you later, guys.
Bye for now.
There's a new bar in town. Welcome to the Turnbuckle Arms, where the banter flows like wine and the topics are as fresh as an ice-cold pint.